We're excited to be with you here today. My name is Sheloham Payne, and today we're going to talk about mortgages. So I have a very special guest with me today, CJ, and we're going to go ahead and let CJ introduce himself.
Hey everybody, CJ Busby here. I'm a licensed loan originator, authorized to conduct mortgages in about 12 different states. Started out on the real estate investment side for about 4 years, then transitioned to the financing side.
So thank you for joining us. So, by the grace of God and his teachings, he's been able to guide me through this process where I currently own a townhouse that I rent out, and I own a small condo. So people always ask me a lot of questions about mortgages and finances and that type of information. So I wrote them all down, and I have them here for you, and I don't want to miss anything. So we're going to get started, okay? You ready?
Sounds good.
So the first question is, what do people need to qualify for a mortgage? What would you tell them?
Sure, that's a great question. So I would tell any person that I'm talking to, the first thing that you need to realize is understanding your ability to repay, which mortgage companies assess heavily. So you always need to have a grasp on your finances, really assessing how much income you receive versus the liabilities going out, as well as your credit utilization. And I bring up credit because in the mortgage industry, we use what's called a tri-merge report. So we take the middle score between Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian, and that will actually be your qualifying score. So let me ask you, have you ever checked your Experian app and your score
It's high.
might be 800,
Yes.
right? And then all of a sudden you go to a car dealership or someone runs your credit to assess things, and all of a sudden your Equifax might be at a 580. Well, that means that we would take the middle score, which might land you around a 630, and that would be your qualifying score for a mortgage.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful. It's true. There's always one score report that's really, really high.
Exactly.
Okay, next question. If someone already has a mortgage, can they refinance to lower their mortgage rate?
They can.
Okay.
I would say get in contact with any local lender that you have, or even a bank if that's your personal preference, where you like to walk into an establishment and look someone face to face while you discuss, the mortgage that you currently have. And they'd really break down your scenario with you. They let you know if the market can provide a better opportunity, which would create some monthly savings, or pretty much structure a game plan for you to see if that is the right time for you to refinance.
That's another point. I'm like that too, old school. I like to meet the person face to face. Okay, so next question. About how long do you think the process takes to purchase a home?
To purchase, okay. So purchasing, of course, means that you are probably identifying a property that you're interested in, maybe some decision making with a realtor
Right.
or any sort of licensed real estate agent. That process would probably take anywhere from 30 to 45 days if you have a bona fide offer accepted. If you're still in the process of identifying a property and
Right.
going to open houses and showings, that might take a month or two. It all depends on which market you're looking in, but it's well worth it.
It is. I would say you're spot on about that. It does take time, and that was one of the biggest things that helped me was not to rush it, to just go through the process. So that's an important tip. So thank you for that. How does that compare with the amount of time it takes to process like a refinance, that process? What's the difference, you think?
So refinancing, of course, means that you've already accomplished the hardest part, and that's obtaining the real estate. So now that you actually have ownership and you have a mortgage already, that process would take anywhere from 21 to 30 days if you don't need what's called an appraisal. That's basically someone coming out to validate how much the home is worth.
Right.
I've seen refinances take as little as 14 days to close.
Wow, that's true. I do remember when I refinanced, the process was so much faster. I was like, what? That's it? Because I was thinking about when I bought the property. So those are excellent points that you brought up. So on the other end, what about bankruptcies and foreclosures? Like how do they affect someone who wants to buy property?
So they would affect you because in the mortgage industry, we have what's called seasoning periods. And those foreclosures, bankruptcies have different segments and where they fall off of your credit profile. And up until those points, lenders, mortgage companies, banks, they'll be assessing you based on what your credit report reflects. So I'll give you an example. Bankruptcies have different chapters. So you'll have to wait the seasoning periods for each individual one that you might have. One might take about 4 years, the other might take 7.
Okay.
They'll then fall off of your credit profile, and then you can start to advance and look at different mortgage opportunities.
Okay, so there's always hope.
There is.
There's always hope. Okay, are there any special programs or incentives that you know about for first-time homebuyers?
Of course, you know what? I don't want to butcher anything, so I'm actually going to pull out my phone and reference
That's
a few
great.
things. So that program is called the Forgivable Equity Builder Assistance Loan Program. And what that details is that you can use 10% of the sales price or the appraised value, whichever is the greater, and you can reallocate that towards your down payment assistance. The only caveat here is that you have to live in the home for 5 years for the loan to be forgivable. It would be a zero interest or, zero sort of repayment loan. And another caveat is, of course, the qualification. So we already mentioned that you have to live in the home for 5 years. Another determining factor is that you have to meet an income requirement. And since this is a government aid or an aid that is geared towards helping first-time homeowners, this one is a little bit different. So you can only make 80% of the median income in the area that you're searching in.
Oh, I see.
So as you mentioned, there are some first-time homeowner programs. I would say really dig deep and figure out what each program entails. That way you're best suited and best prepared to kind of search for those answers.
Okay, so educate yourself. So use your
Definitely.
resources. Awesome. Okay, last question. If someone feels like, okay, I'm ready to make that move, I'm ready to get my first mortgage, what advice would you give them about finances? Like, how would they get started?
Great question. So this actually ties in together with what we started with, right?
Correct.
We talked about income. We talked about debt. Actually, now that I say those two terms together, the correct terminology for it in my industry is called your debt to income ratio, where we assess what's coming in compared to what's going out. So really, you want to minimize and have the lowest debt to income ratio as possible. And that really makes you look great in terms of your qualifications and what sort of services or benefits a mortgage company can provide you.
That's excellent because it's important for people to just look at their finances. I know that helped me a lot. I don't think people realize where their money goes because some people, they get their money and they just eat it all, right? They go out to eat all the time,
Right.
spend it that way. Some people shop it all away. They just shop all the time. So that's a good point of just knowing what your bills are, how much you make, and what you're doing with that money. Any other tips that you would give to anyone that's ready for that mortgage or about finances?
Yep. So I would say in terms of financing, I come across a lot of folks that are really just frustrated. And I say that because the Bureau of Labor and Statistics released data which stated that people of color only make up 16% of the finance sector. Yeah, which is, I couldn't even believe what I read. So if you think about any sort of profession out there, what do people do? They clock off of work, they leave work, and then they almost bring work home. So people have exposures. I mean, if you have a family member that built homes, I mean, naturally you might know how to repair some plumbing because someone brought that knowledge home to you. So I believe that if we were more involved in the sector of finance, that would actually create a lot more knowledge amongst our community.
That is an excellent point, and that's an excellent way for us to end this session. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And thank all of you for joining us, and we hope you continue to enjoy the conference.